So here we are in the bathroom. We are going to talk about cleaning out a paintbrush properly. We are using acrylic paint, so the real thing to think about here is that you want the least amount of acrylic paint to be going down your drain, because acrylic paint is a plastic paint. So if you end up having lots and lots of paint going down your drain, over time that paint is going to clog up your drain. So that works really well with the way that I like to teach cleaning out your brush during class. So if you get into the habit of cleaning out your brush correctly during class, it's going to be a lot easier cleanup for you. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what you're doing with your dirty old paintbrush. One other thing to think about before we talk about this paintbrush is to keep your apron on when you clean out your brushes. You're probably going to get paint on yourself when you do this, so don't take your apron off until after you've cleaned up everything. Okay, so here is our painty old paintbrush. You can see it's got a bunch of globs of paint on it. That means this paintbrush has not been wiped out or cleaned out correctly during the painting. So what you'll do is you will grab some kind of napkin and you will wipe off and squeeze off as much of this paint first before you go trying to clean it in the sink, right? And you can clean your brush every time during class this way too, or during the course. You're going to make sure to squeeze and wipe as much paint out onto a napkin first. It's kind of like you're just sacrificing a napkin to save your brush and your water and your sink, right? So we're getting out as much paint as possible. Here's our water glass. It's got some dirty water in it. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to dump this out into the sink. Now, if you wanted to dump this outside, you can do that as well. But for me, there's not a lot of paint in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and dump it in the sink. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the water. And as it is flowing into the cup at a low pace, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to pounce it and push it down on the bottom of the glass. And I'm going to twirl the bristles around and then dump out the water. You're going to continue to swirl around and pressing down on your bristles to open the bristles. Swirl around until the water that is coming out of your cup is clear. You don't want to see any color in it. Now if your brush is super dirty, you might have to clean it and then go back to this step. You might have to clean it with a scrub brush. But really you should be able to do that, get a somewhat clear brush. I like to use one of these Scotch-Brite green scrubbies. Any kind of scrubby with some grit to it will work. But you got this scrubby, that's where you will take some time, clean off the metal clasp, clean off the handle. You want to get all those bits off so they don't bother you later. And then when you're working on the bristles, you really just need to kind of squeeze the bristles like you did within the napkin and just get off as much as you can. Then you will take this scrub brush and you also clean out your cup to get off any chunks of paint that might be in there. Now, of course, with any kind of cup, it's not going to come completely clean. It doesn't really need to. You just want to get most of it off so the next time you paint, you don't have paint everywhere and dried up paint everywhere. And for the very last step of cleaning your brush, after you've got it all cleaned out and it's still wet, you're going to find a piece of hard soap. For me, this is just a piece of soap that I made. It's just kind of, not that special, except that it is a hard soap. So any kind of Dove or Dial, anything that's hard, you're going to take your wet brush and you're going to wipe your bristles onto the soap so that the soap gets penetrated into the bristles. And what this is going to do is it's going to dry and it's going to create a hard layer over the top of your bristles to keep them nice and straight in storage. So after you've put the soap into your bristle by rubbing it on the hard piece of soap, you can find a place to lay this brush down. Somewhere flat would be fine, maybe on a napkin. You can also store them bristles up if you prefer in a glass, but sometimes that can lead to water soaking into the bottom of your handle if you have a wooden handle. So I usually recommend just laying it down somewhere to dry. So to clean up all of your brushes, all you really need is some water, a scrubby, and some hard soap to put into the bristles while it is cleaned out. Whenever you take your brush that has had soap in it to go paint, you're going to make sure to take the brush and get some water and pounce it in the water so that your brush gets soft to use, but the soap will not affect your painting in any way. So even if there's a little bit of soap left in your brush when you start painting, it won't matter. That'll be fine. Another thing to note is if you have a scrubby, you can also use this scrubby to get the paint off of your hands. It doesn't feel really great, but it works really quickly. So it's nice to have one of these sitting around to use to clean up. You can also use this to scrub out any kind of sink or area that you might need to clean up. So that is how you efficiently clean out a brush.